Picture American television without MASH. It's hard to do, isn't it? That's because the show wasn't only a hit, but it redefined what a sitcom could be. First broadcast in 1972, at the tail end of the Vietnam War, MASH took place during the Korean War and masterfully intertwined humor with tragedy. Its offbeat characters explored the chaos of war and the resilience of the human spirit. The show became an instant hit with audiences, but behind the scenes, it was constantly evolving. As the writing began to dig deeper into social commentary and complex character development, creative tensions sometimes emerged. Several beloved cast members eventually decided to leave the series, some for personal reasons, others for professional or creative differences. The truth behind those departures is as fascinating as the show itself. To understand why MASH became such a landmark, we need to set the clock back and look at its origins. Like many timeless television series, MASH originated not on screen, but in print in this case, a novel published by Korean War surgeon H. Richard Hornberger, writing under the pseudonym Dr. Richard Hooker in 1968, titled MASH, about 3 Army doctors. The book was a dramatized and darkly humorous version of his experiences in a mobile Army surgical hospital during the Korean War. Blending sardonic humor with humanity and bitter truths, this novel struck a note with readers and quickly climbed up the bestseller charts, drawing Hollywood's attention. Just 2 years later, director Robert Altman brought the story to life on the screen in the 1970 film MASH. The movie was a black comedy of satire that balanced irreverence with an underlying sense of realism. With Donald Sutherland as Hawkeye Pierce and Elliot Gould as Trapper John, it articulated the mood of the public during the ongoing Vietnam War. It was both a critical and commercial success, garnering the Palme d'Or at Cannes and an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. The real cultural explosion, however, happened when CBS adapted the story into a television series in 1972. Developed by Gene Reynolds and Larry Gelbart, the TV version of MASH bowed on September 17th of that same year. It retained the wartime setting and irreverent humor, while adding greater emphasis on character-driven storytelling and sensitivity. Alan Alda took on the role of Hawkeye Pierce and soon became the show's moral and comedic heart. MASH started as anything but a runaway success. The first season struggled in the ratings and was almost canceled. Then viewership soared after CBS moved it to Saturday nights, and its influence grew rapidly. MASH was innovative for the era because it broke several norms of regular television at that time. It merged comedy with pathos, used real footage of war, and at times even experimented with sound design, such as replacing the standard laugh track with helicopter sounds. Alan Alda went from being the lead of the show to its creative architect, a writer and director. As Alda took over, MASH began to focus on deeper, more emotionally resonant stories about the human cost of war. But not everyone in the cast felt that was a good thing as the show matured. According to various of them, actors were either left out of the action or stereotyped in these roles, while others grew restless for other creative outlets. Among those departures, none was more shocking, maybe more defining, than that of McLean Stevenson. His was the first major cast change, and led to one of television's most unforgettable moments. When at the end of Season 3, Stevenson's character, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, was killed off, it was a shock to the audience. The episode's closing line became one of the most powerful moments in TV history. Radar announcing that Blake's plane had been shot down over the Sea of Japan with no survivors. Stevenson had been with MASH since its inception, playing Henry Blake as a kindly, at times bungling commanding officer. His warmth and humanity balanced the show's chaos perfectly, and audiences adored him. He even won a Golden Globe for his portrayal. However, behind the scenes, Stevenson was growing dissatisfied. As the series evolved and Alan Alda's Hawkeye increasingly took center stage, Stevenson felt that his role had diminished. He once told People magazine in 1975, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show." While the quote may sound egotistical, it wasn't simply about vanity. Stevenson, like many actors, wanted to feel creatively fulfilled and central to the story. Yet, the direction of MASH had shifted toward Alda's more introspective and dramatic vision, leaving Stevenson yearning for a larger spotlight. That tension ultimately led to his departure, paving the way for one of the most emotionally charged episodes in television history. McLean Stevenson had grand ambitions to be a star. He was affable, funny, and confident, but he shared one problem that many actors face in Hollywood. He struggled against typecasting. But after his achievements on MASH, Stevenson became restless. He understood very well the strong power of television and felt that he had the talent and charisma to lead a show himself. He wanted to be the star, the one carrying the story, not the second or third in command. At the end of the third season, Stevenson made a bold decision. He called the producers and told them that he would not return for another season. When a star left a sitcom, their character was normally written off gently, sent away on reassignment, transferred, or married off. But MASH was not a typical sitcom. Writers Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds seized Stevenson's departure as a chance for a creative risk. They wanted to remind audiences that MASH was at its heart a story about war, and in war, not everyone makes it home. The result was the now legendary episode Abyssinia, Henry. Henry Blake learns of his discharge and that he will finally be going home in the episode. The camp gives him a warm emotional farewell filled with laughter, hugs, and heartfelt goodbyes. The majority of the episode had left viewers thinking it was a happy ending. It was well into the last scene when Radar O'Reilly entered the operating room with a somber face and said the fateful words, "Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors." The moment stunned the nation. The scene ended in silence, no music, no laugh track, no sound except the hum of operating equipment. It was one of the first times in television history that a beloved sitcom character had been killed off so suddenly and without warning. The emotional reactions from the cast were real. Only Gary Berghoff, who played Radar, had been told about the twist in advance so that he could prepare himself. When the episode aired, CBS received thousands of letters from viewers, some in praise of the bold realism, others furious that such a beloved character had been taken away. But Gelbart defended the decision, explaining, "We wanted to say that not everybody gets to go home." And Henry didn't. After he left MASH, Stevenson was set for stardom. NBC inked him to a major contract, and he launched The McLean Stevenson Show, a family sitcom built around his easygoing charm. But the magic didn't last. The series was canceled after one season, and his follow-up show, Hello Larry, also failed to connect with audiences. Both projects were heavily promoted, but quickly became punchlines in TV history. 20 years later, in 1983, he told the Los Angeles Times that he regretted his choices. "I took myself out of the game," Stevenson said. He came to realize too late that MASH was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, a combination of writing, cast chemistry, and cultural relevance that would never happen again. Though his co-stars, including Alan Alda and Loretta Swit, publicly respected his decision to move on, many privately felt he walked away too early from something special. Even though Stevenson continued to work in television and made sporadic guest appearances, he never recaptured the magic of MASH or the emotional connection audiences felt for Henry Blake. Upon his death in 1996, at the age of 68, tributes poured in from fans and colleagues alike. Gary Berghoff called him a light-hearted spirit who brought happiness to everyone around him. Ironically, the role he left behind turned out to be his most enduring legacy. In looking for a bigger spotlight, Stevenson created one of television's most memorable characters, the man whose warmth and humanity gave MASH its heart. And as dramatic as his exit was, the departure of another cast member proved to be far more mysterious. Unlike Stevenson, who was given a farewell episode and one of the most iconic send-offs in television history, Wayne Rogers simply vanished. One episode he was there, the next he was gone, no goodbye, no explanation, no closure. The story of his departure is complex, filled with quiet tension and behind-the-scenes drama. Rogers played Trapper John McIntyre, one half of the show's original comic duo alongside Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce. Their chemistry was electric, fast-talking, rebellious, and hilarious. They embodied a wartime version of The Odd Couple, with surgical instruments instead of punchlines. Behind the laughter, though, frustration was brewing. When Rogers initially joined MASH, he thought that it would be an ensemble show where all members of the cast enjoyed equal focus. As the series progressed, it became more and more Hawkeye-centered. Alda wasn't only the lead actor. He was a writer and director, and began to shape much of the creative direction of the show. Rogers admired Alda's talent, but soon felt himself being pushed aside. His character, once a co-lead, had become little more than a sidekick. Trapper didn't have much to do, Rogers said in later interviews. He was one of two buddies, and then he became the guy who nodded at everything Alan said. Instead, Rogers quietly handled his departure. He didn't renew his contract after the third season was over. Truthfully, the producers didn't realize he was really gone until the filming for the fourth season began. To add even more confusion, Rogers had never signed a formal contract. He'd been working on a handshake agreement. When the studio threatened to sue him for a breach of contract, they had no case. His sudden departure left the writers scrambling. They had to rewrite the opening of Season 4 to explain his absence. In the premiere, it was briefly mentioned that Trapper John had been honorably discharged while Hawkeye was away. No farewell scene, no emotional goodbye, just an abrupt ending for one of the show's most beloved characters. Rogers' departure was much quieter than Stevenson's, but no less important. It signified the end of MASH's original dynamic and marked another era that would take the show in deeper, more reflective directions.